What do you do when the one person you trust most trades your dream for their own gain? At 25, Sophie had a vision that kept her going through long, grueling days. A bakery of her own, a warm little haven filled with the scent of fresh bread and the hum of happy customers. She'd sketched it in notebooks since she was 10, doodling pastel storefronts with a sign that read Sophie Sweets. It wasn't just a job, it was her heart, her escape from a childhood of instability. She'd saved every penny for it, working double shifts at a bustling cafe downtown, her hands calloused from kneading dough, her apron stained with flour and hope. She'd sacrificed nights out, new clothes, even small joys like a weekend trip, all for that dream. 6 months ago, she'd hit her goal, $15,000, enough for a small space she'd been eyeing. It was a triumph, a quiet victory over years of doubt, and she couldn't wait to share it with her mother, Claire. Claire had always been the practical one, a single mom who'd raised Sophie alone after her dad walked out when Sophie was 6. At 48, Claire was sharp-edged, her face lined with the weight of years spent scraping by, waitressing, cleaning houses, whatever paid the bills. She taught Sophie to work hard, to stand tall, but her love came with a price. "Dreams don't pay bills," she'd say, her voice clipped, whenever Sophie mentioned her bakery plans as a teenager. Sophie would nod, bite her tongue, and keep dreaming anyway, tucking her sketches under her pillow where Claire couldn't see. She understood her mother's caution. Life had been hard on Claire, and she'd sacrificed plenty to keep a roof over their heads. But Sophie had hoped that this time, with $15,000 in hand, Claire would see her vision, maybe even be proud. She'd been wrong. When Sophie told her, bursting into Claire's cramped apartment with a grin, Claire's reaction was a cold splash of reality. "That's a lot of money," Claire had said, her smile thin, her eyes distant. "Be careful with it." Sophie's excitement dimmed, but she brushed it off. Claire was always cautious. Maybe she just needed time to understand. A week later, Claire offered a solution that seemed like a rare moment of support. "Let me keep it safe," she'd said, sitting at her kitchen table, a cup of tea cooling in her hands. "Banks can mess up, fees, holds, whatever. I'll hold it in my account until you're ready." Sophie hesitated, her gut whispering caution, but her heart won. This was her mom, the woman who'd worked double shifts to buy her school supplies, who'd stayed up late, sewing her prom dress. If she couldn't trust Claire, who could she trust? She transferred the money that night, $15,000, with a memo for safekeeping. It felt like a team effort, a bridge between them. That was 3 months ago. Lately, Claire had been distant, always busy, she claimed, with odd jobs and errands. Sophie didn't press. She was too caught up in her own plans, scouring the city for the perfect bakery space. She'd visit potential spots after her shifts, her sneakers worn thin from walking, her notebook filled with pros and cons. Last week, she'd found it, a tiny storefront on a quiet street, its faded brick walls whispering potential. The windows were dusty, the interior bare, but she could see it, glass counters gleaming, the air warm with cinnamon, a chalkboard menu above the register. The rent was steep, but her $15,000 would cover the deposit and first few months. She called Claire from the sidewalk, her voice trembling with joy. "I need the money now, Mom. It's happening." Claire's pause on the line was too long. "We'll talk tomorrow," she'd said, her tone flat, almost hollow. Sophie's stomach twisted, but she told herself Claire was just tired, maybe a long day of cleaning or driving for one of her gig jobs. She went to bed dreaming of ovens and icing, her notebook open on her pillow. The next day, she arrived at Claire's apartment, her excitement a live wire. Claire sat at the kitchen table, a stack of papers in front of her, her hands clasped tight. She wouldn't meet Sophie's eyes. "Where's the money?" Sophie asked, her voice still light, though a thread of unease wove through it. Claire shifted, tapping a pen against the table. "It's tied up." "Tied up?" Sophie's smile faltered. "What does that mean?" "I used it," Claire said, finally looking up, her gaze hard. "For something important." Sophie's breath caught, her mind scrambling. "Used it? Mom, That was mine for the bakery. I know, Claire said, her tone defensive, her shoulders stiff. But things came up. I needed it. Needed it for what? Sophie pressed, her voice rising, her chest tightening with a mix of fear and disbelief. Claire slid a paper across the table, a receipt, dated 2 months back. $15,000 paid to a car dealership. Sophie stared at it, the numbers blurring as her eyes burned. You bought a car? She whispered, her voice breaking. It's an investment, Claire said quickly, her words clipped. I can drive for work, make more money, deliveries, ride shares. It'll help us both in the long run. Help us. Sophie's hands shook as she gripped the receipt. That was my dream, Mom. You knew that. I trusted you. I'm your mother, Claire snapped, standing now, her chair scraping the floor. I've sacrificed everything for you. Years of nothing, working myself to the bone. I needed this. You'll save again. Sophie stumbled back, the receipt crumpling in her fist. Her savings gone. Her bakery gone. Claire stood there, unyielding, as if Sophie's dream was a childish whim she'd outgrow, a toy she could replace. But it wasn't. It was everything. Her future, her hope, her proof she could rise above the struggles Claire had always warned her about. She'd trusted her mother, poured her heart into that money, and Claire had sold it for a car she didn't even need. She left without another word, the apartment door clicking shut behind her. Outside, the air felt heavy, pressing down on her as she walked to the cafe, her shift looming. Her dream was in ashes now, but something else flickered beneath the hurt, anger, raw and fierce. Claire thought she'd won, that Sophie would take it like she always had, nodding and moving on. Not this time. She wiped her eyes, her jaw set. At work, she kneaded dough on autopilot, her hands trembling, the flour-dusted counter a blur. She'd get her dream back, somehow. And she'd make Claire see what she'd thrown away, not with spite, but with proof she didn't need her mother to make it. Sophie stood at the cafe counter, flour dusting her apron, her hands moving through dough on instinct. The receipt from Claire, $15,000 for a car, burned in her pocket, a constant reminder of the betrayal that had shattered her dream. She'd saved for years. Every tip, every overtime shift, poured into that vision of a bakery, her own little haven with warm lights and the smell of fresh bread. She'd sacrificed so much, nights out with friends, new clothes, even small treats like a coffee she didn't make herself, all for that $15,000. And Claire, her own mother, had taken it without a second thought, trading Sophie's future for a shiny new car. The betrayal cut deeper than the loss itself. She trusted Claire, believed in her, and now she felt like a fool, her faith in her mother crumbling like dry dough. Her shift dragged, the cafe's usual hum a distant noise. Customers ordered lattes, pastries, the usual, but Sophie barely registered their faces. She kept seeing that car in her mind, sleek, silver, parked outside Claire's rundown apartment like a trophy. An investment, Claire had called it, as if Sophie's dream was a frivolous whim, a child's fantasy that could wait. Sophie wanted to scream, to march back to Claire's and demand answers, but what good would it do? Claire wouldn't budge, she never did. Sophie had seen that look in her mother's eyes before, the unyielding set of her jaw, the way she'd defend her choices, no matter the cost. It was the same look she'd worn when Sophie was 12, begging to join a baking class, and Claire had said, "We can't afford it, stop dreaming and start helping." Sophie had stopped asking then, but she'd never stopped dreaming. Until now. After her shift, Sophie sat in the break room, the cafe quiet except for the hum of the espresso machine. She pulled out her phone, staring at her bank app. Her account, once brimming with $15,000, now sat at $42.17, just enough for groceries, maybe a utility bill. She scrolled back to the transfer, 3 months ago, sent to Claire's account with a memo. For safekeeping. Safekeeping. The word tasted like ash now, a cruel joke. She'd trusted Claire because she was her mom, the woman who'd worked herself raw to keep them afloat, who'd taught her to knead dough when she was barely tall enough to reach the counter. Those memories, Claire's rare smiles, the way she'd hum old songs while they baked together, clashed with the reality of what she'd done. How could the same woman who'd given her so much take everything away? She texted Claire, her fingers trembling with a mix of anger and desperation. "We need to talk. Now." No reply came. Typical. Claire would dodge until she had a story ready, a way to twist it so Sophie felt guilty for being upset. Sophie shoved her phone into her bag, her jaw tight. She wasn't waiting, she'd go to her. She grabbed her jacket, the cafe's fluorescent lights harsh against her tired eyes, and headed out. The drive to Claire's took 20 minutes, the city lights streaking past her window like blurred stars. Her mind raced, replaying every moment with Claire, every lecture on practicality, every time she dismissed Sophie's bakery plans as a pipe dream. "You need a real job," Claire had said once, when Sophie was 16, showing her a sketch of her imagined storefront. Baking's a hobby, not a life. Had Claire ever believed in her? Or had she just seen a pile of cash to grab when the moment came? By the time Sophie knocked on Claire's door, her anger had hardened into something sharp, a blade she'd never turned on her mother before. Claire answered, her face tight, the new car gleaming in the lot behind her like a taunt. "Sophie," she said, stepping aside.
"Come in."
Sophie didn't move, her feet rooted to the stoop. "Why, Mom? Why'd you do it?" Her voice trembled, but she held her ground, her hands clenched at her sides. Claire sighed, crossing her arms, her posture defensive. "I told you it's an investment. I'll pay you back." "Pay me back." Sophie's voice cracked, the hurt spilling out. "With what? You don't even have a steady job. You're cleaning houses one day, driving for some app the next. How's that going to get me $15,000? "I'm working on it," Claire said, her tone sharp, her eyes narrowing. "I'm doing delivery now, rideshares too. It'll add up. You'll see." "It won't add up to $15,000, Sophie shot back, stepping closer, her voice rising despite the lump in her throat. "That was mine, Mom. For my bakery. You knew that. I showed you the sketches, told you every plan. You knew what it meant to me." Claire's face hardened, her hands dropping to her hips. "I've given you everything: roof, food, school, clothes. I worked myself to death for you, Sophie. I needed this. You'll get another chance, you're young." "Another chance?" Sophie's laugh was sharp, bitter, echoing in the quiet lot. "I worked years for that money. Every shift, every tip, every time I said no to something I wanted because I had a goal. You don't get to decide what I can lose. You don't get to decide my dreams are less important than your car." "I'm your mother," Claire snapped, her voice rising to match Sophie's, her finger jabbing the air. "I know what's best. I've been through more than you can imagine, years of nothing, of struggling to keep us afloat. I deserved something for myself, just once." "You deserved my savings?" Sophie stepped back, her eyes burning with unshed tears. "I trusted you, Mom. I thought you'd be proud, that you'd want this for me. But you don't even see me, do you? I'm just a kid to you, someone who'll get another chance." Claire's mouth tightened, her gaze flickering with something, guilt, maybe, or defiance. "You're ungrateful," she said, her voice low now, cutting. "I raised you. I gave you everything I had. And I paid for it," Sophie said, her voice breaking as she turned away. "I paid for it with my dream." "Sophie, wait," Claire called, but Sophie kept walking, her steps heavy, her chest tight. She drove back to her tiny apartment, the silence deafening as she shut the door behind her. She sank onto her couch, her hands still trembling, and pulled out her notebook, pages of bakery sketches, recipes, budgets, dreams. She flipped to a blank page and wrote, Plan B, her pen digging into the paper. She couldn't get the money back, not yet, but she could start over. She had skills, a job, a spark Claire couldn't touch. She'd save again, slower this time, on her own terms, without her mother's shadow. Her phone buzzed, her coworker, Mia, asking about her shift. Sophie hesitated, then called her. "Hey, You still looking for extra hours? Mia asked, her voice bright. Yeah, Sophie said, wiping her eyes, her voice steadier now. More than ever. I need all the shifts I can get.
Cool, Mia replied.
I'll hook you up. Double shifts next week. Perfect, Sophie said, a flicker of hope igniting in her chest. She hung up, grabbing a pen to jot down a new schedule. She'd work harder, scrape by, build it back. But Claire? She wasn't off the hook. The next day, Sophie stopped by the cafe's office, pulling the manager aside. Any chance I can sell some pastries here? Test the waters. He shrugged, scratching his chin. If they're good, sure. Bring some in tomorrow. She nodded, her mind already racing with recipes, lemon scones, cinnamon rolls, the ones her customers always loved. She'd bake at home, small batches, and sell them cheap. Every dollar would go into a new account, one Claire couldn't touch. It wasn't a bakery, not yet, but it was a start, a tiny rebellion against the woman who'd sold her dream. Claire called that night, her voice clipped through the voicemail. I'm sorry you're upset, she said, no warmth in her tone. But I did what I had to. You'll see. No mention of paying her back, just more excuses, more deflections. Sophie deleted it, her jaw set. She didn't need Claire's approval, or her money. She'd prove her dream wasn't for sale, that she could rise without her mother's help. And one day, Claire would see it, too. Not just the bakery, but the daughter she'd underestimated. Sophie woke before dawn, her tiny kitchen a mess of flour and sugar. She'd spent the night baking lemon scones, cinnamon rolls, her best recipes, her hands steady despite the ache in her chest. Claire's betrayal still stung, that $15,000 Kara ghost in her mind, but she'd made a choice. She couldn't undo her mother's actions, but she could rebuild, smarter, stronger alone. Today, she'd take her first step. She packed the pastries into a box, her breath fogging in the cool morning air as she walked to the cafe. Her manager, Tom, was already there, unlocking the door. These the goods? He asked, eyeing the box. Yeah, Sophie said, setting it down. Try one. He grabbed a scone, took a bite and nodded.
Solid.
Put 'em out front. $2 each. See how they sell. Sophie's heart lifted, just a fraction. She arranged the pastries on a tray by the register, a handwritten sign beside them. Sophie's Treats. It wasn't a bakery, but it was hers. Customers trickled in, regulars, early risers, some curious, some indifferent. By noon, half the tray was gone. $20 in her pocket. Small but real. She texted Mia during her break. Scones are selling. Can you cover me tomorrow? I'll bake more. Mia replied fast, you got it. Keep killing it. Sophie smiled, pocketing the cash in a jar she'd labeled Dream Fund. Claire's account was off limits now. This was her fortress. Claire called again that afternoon. Sophie let it go to voicemail, same as last time. We need to talk, Claire's message said, her tone sharper. You're acting like I'm the enemy. Call me back. Sophie deleted it, her jaw tight. Claire wasn't the enemy. She was the thief. Talking wouldn't change that. The week blurred, double shifts, late-night baking, early mornings at the cafe. Sophie's Treats caught on, customers asked for them. Tom upped the price to $3. By Friday, her jar held $75. She added tips from her shifts, pushing it to $120. Slow, steady, hers. She sketched in her notebook between orders, new recipes, a logo, a vision taking shape. Claire couldn't steal this. Saturday brought a surprise. Claire showed up at the cafe, her new car parked out front like a taunt. Sophie froze mid-pour, coffee splashing the counter. Claire walked in, her face set, and sat at a table. We're talking, she said, loud enough for heads to turn. Sophie wiped her hands, nodding to Mia to cover her. She sat across from Claire, arms crossed. What? You're ignoring me, Claire said. I'm your mother. You don't get to shut me out. You don't get to take my money and call it love, Sophie replied, her voice low but firm. Claire leaned forward. I told you I'll pay you back. I'm doing delivery now. It's working. How much have you made? Sophie asked. Claire hesitated. A couple hundred so far. A couple hundred? Sophie's laugh was sharp. That's not even close, Mom. You spent my dream on a car you can't afford. It's an investment, Claire insisted. You'll see. I'll get you the money. When? Sophie pressed. Next year? 5 years? I needed it now. Claire's eyes flashed. I've sacrificed everything for you. Years of scraping by, no help. I deserved something. You deserved my savings? Sophie stood, her chair scraping. I trusted you. That's on me. But this. She gestured to the tray of pastries. This is mine. You don't touch it. Claire's mouth tightened. You're ungrateful. I raised you. And I paid for it, Sophie said, walking away. She grabbed the tray, sold the last scone, and pocketed the cash. Claire left without another word, the car's engine rumbling as she drove off. That night, Sophie baked again. Blueberry muffins this time. Her jar hit $200. She researched small loans, crowdfunding, anything to speed up her climb. Mia pitched in, spreading word at the cafe. You've got fans, she said, grinning. They're asking for more. Good, Sophie replied, kneading dough. I'll give them more. Claire texted later. I'm trying. Meet me halfway. Sophie stared at it, then set her phone down. Halfway? Claire had taken everything. There was no middle ground left. She'd tried meeting her mother there her whole life. Not anymore. By week's end, her jar held $300. Tom pulled her aside. These treats are a hit. Want a display case? Split the profits. Sophie nodded, a real smile breaking through.
Yeah.
Let's do it. She walked home under streetlights, her steps lighter. Claire's shadow loomed, but Sophie's spark burned brighter. She wasn't just rebuilding, she was rising. And soon, Claire would see what she'd lost. Sophie stood behind the cafe counter, arranging muffins in the new display case Tom had set up. It was small, glass, scratched secondhand, but it was hers. A handwritten sign read Sophie's Treats, and beneath it, a jar marked Dream Fund held $450. Weeks of baking, selling, and saving had brought her here. Not to her bakery yet, but closer. Claire's betrayal still ached, that $15,000 car a scar, but Sophie had turned the pain into fuel. She wasn't waiting for her mother to fix this. She was doing it herself. The cafe buzzed that morning. Regulars grabbed scones. New faces asked about her recipes. Mia worked the register, tossing Sophie a grin. Told you they'd love it. You're a star. Sophie smiled back, modest but proud. Her treats weren't just selling, they were building something. Each dollar in that jar was a brick in her foundation, one Claire couldn't touch. Claire hadn't called since their last fight, but Sophie knew she'd show up eventually. She always did, when guilt or need kicked in. Sure enough, that afternoon, the car rolled into the lot, shiny, mocking. Claire walked in, her face softer than before, a grocery bag in hand. Sophie braced herself, wiping flour off her apron. Hey, Claire said, setting the bag down. Brought you some stuff, sugar, butter. Peace offering. Sophie glanced at it, then back at Claire. I don't need a peace offering. I need my money. Claire sighed, sitting uninvited. I've got $500 saved from driving. It's a start. Take it. $500? Sophie's tone was flat. That's not even close, Mom. You spent $15,000. I'm trying, Claire said, her voice rising. It's not easy out there. I thought you'd understand. I did, Sophie replied. For years, I understood. I gave you my savings because I trusted you. You don't get to play the victim now. Claire's eyes flickered, hurt, maybe shame, but she straightened. I'm still your mother. I messed up, but I'm not the enemy. You're not, Sophie agreed. But you're not my partner either. I'm doing this alone. Claire stared, then nodded slowly.
Fine. Keep your treats.
I'll figure out the rest. She left the bag and walked out, the car peeling away. Sophie didn't touch the groceries. She donated them to the cafe instead, keeping her hands clean of Claire's guilt. The $500 didn't tempt her either. It wasn't hers anymore. It was Claire's debt to carry. Days turned to weeks. Sophie's display case became a fixture. Muffins, cookies, tarts, all hers. Her jar hit $800, then $1,000. She opened a new bank account, locked tight, and deposited every cent. Mia spread word online, posting photos of Sophie's treats with captions like "Support local dreams." Tips poured in, customers left notes. "Keep going, girl," and Tom offered her a weekend slot to sell more. One evening, a woman lingered after buying a tart. "You make these?" she asked. "Yeah," Sophie said, wiping the counter. "They're good," the woman replied. "I run a bakery downtown. Need a part-timer?" Sophie froze, then nodded. "I'd love that. Start next week," the woman said, handing her a card. "Bring your recipes." Sophie clutched the card. Elena's bake shop, her pulse racing. Not her own place, but a foot in the door. She called Mia after closing, voice shaking. "I got a gig. A real bakery." Mia hooped.
See?
"You're unstoppable." That night, Sophie baked for herself a single cinnamon roll, warm and hers. She ate it at her table, her notebook open to sketches of her future shop. The $15,000 was gone, but she'd clawed back $1,200 and a chance. Claire's shadow faded with every step she took. Claire showed up again a month later, her car dusty and now. She slid an envelope across the counter, $800 in cash. "More from the driving," she said. "Take it or not, it's yours." Sophie looked at it, then pushed it back.
Keep it.
"I don't need your money anymore." Claire's face fell. "Sophie." "I've got this," Sophie cut in. "I'm working at Elena's now. Saving again. My dreams not for sale." Claire nodded, pocketing the cash. "You're tougher than me," she said quietly and left. Sophie watched her go. No anger left, just distance. She turned back to her display, adding fresh scones. Her jar hit $1,500 that week. Elena praised her work, hinting at a bigger role. Sophie smiled, kneading dough at the bakery, her hands sure. Claire had sold her dream once, but she couldn't touch this one. Months later, Sophie walked past that storefront she'd lost, the one she'd saved for. A new sign hung there, not hers, but she didn't flinch. She had a plan now, a path. Her treats sold out daily, her savings grew, and her heart was full. She'd built this, piece by piece, and no one could take it away.